For decades, the McMahon family has been the beating heart and sometimes the black hole of professional wrestling. From Vince McMahon transforming a regional promotion into a billion-dollar global empire, to scandals that very nearly destroyed it all. The McMahon story isn't just about wrestling, it's about power, money, and the moral cost of creating an empire. Today, I'm peeling back the curtain on the many crimes and controversies that have followed the McMahon family inside and outside of the WWE. Most notably touching on Vince McMahon because, well, you know. When Vince McMahon took control of the World Wrestling Federation from his father in the 1980s, he promised to take wrestling national. What he really did was buy, bully, and bury the competition from the start. Now here's what I will go ahead and say, I'm not blind to the cruelty of business. Sometimes business does come down to doing what you gotta do to survive. But throughout the 1980s, Vince raided talent from regional promotions across the US, violating what was an unspoken agreement among promoters called the territory system. This in of itself was not illegal, but it set the precedent that McMahon was willing to do whatever it took to dominate pro wrestling. By 1984, the WWF had monopolized American wrestling, with dozens of promotions folding and things were never really the same. And the message was clear. Vince McMahon didn't compete, he conquered by any means necessary. Vince's empire wasn't built without cracks, and in the 90s, those cracks widened into a full federal case. In 1994, Vince McMahon was indicted by the US government on charges of steroid distribution to WWE wrestlers. The government accused McMahon of fueling an era of chemically enhanced superstars, endangering performers for profit. Hulk Hogan testified that McMahon knew about widespread steroid use, although later he softened that statement, which is a rabbit hole that I'm not going to dive down right now because I can make an entire video about the many lies of Hulk Hogan, brother. McMahon was ultimately acquitted, but the trial left a permanent stain on WWE's image and his own, and a trail of wrestlers whose health would never recover. The 1990s and 2000s were the WWE's most profitable and most tragic eras. Countless wrestlers died young, often from heart failure, addiction, accidents, or mental collapse. All the way from Owen Hart, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Test, Crash Holly. Critics have accused McMahon of running performers into the ground with no off-season in WWE, no union, and limited health protections.
Well, they're independent contractors, pal.
Among these tragedies was the aforementioned Owen Hart tragedy. In 1999, Owen fell to his death during a stunt gone wrong at Over the Edge. A chilling and ironic title in hindsight. WWE continued the show that night with JR announcing his death on air.
I have the unfortunate responsibility to let everyone know that Owen Hart has died. Owen Hart has tragically died from that accident here tonight.
The Hart family later sued WWE, reaching a settlement worth $18 million. In the years that followed, the deaths kept coming. Often sudden, often far too young, and often very preventable. Eddie Guerrero, one of the most beloved performers in WWE history, died in 2005 at just 38 years old from heart failure linked to years of steroid and substance abuse. His passing shocked fans and wrestlers alike, exposing how little support existed for performers battling addiction and the physical toll of constant travel and bumps. Many of these tragedies deserve a bigger dive in their own right, but we'll focus on the McMahons for now. 2 years later, in 2007, wrestling was rocked again. This time by horror and disbelief. Chris Benoit, Eddie's best friend, murdered his wife and son before taking his own life at his home. Medical reports would reveal Benoit suffered from severe CTE, the kind of brain damage comparable to an 80-year-old Alzheimer patient. And while we will never know the true answer of what I'm about to say, it is generally predicted and reported, given the state Benoit was in anyway, that he would have died by 2009 or 2010 anyway. However, for as dark as it may seem, scheme, that is definitely the better timeline, considering in that timeline his wife Nancy and his son Daniel would have actually got to live a full, long life, and Benoit's memory would not have been besmirched like it is now. Experts said years of concussions, untreated head trauma, and performance-enhancing drugs likely contributed to his mental collapse. The Benoit tragedy forced WWE to re-examine its wellness policies and erase Benoit's legacy from company programming forever. But for many, it symbolized a much deeper rot under Vince McMahon, a business model that rewarded pain, ignored recovery, and discarded its broken stars. There were many more I haven't even named. For example, Tess died at age 33 from an accidental overdose in 2009. Crash Holly, gone at 32, ruled as a suicide after years of career decline, bumps, and reported depression. Each loss reflected the same underlying issue: a system that pushed wrestlers beyond human limits, then moved on to the next show. When it comes to controversies, it's tough not to touch on the subtle and sometimes blatant racism under Vince over the years. I mean, again, I am genuinely still baffled that he said the N-word on live television and everybody just kept it moving.
Yeah, what's good in the hood?
Just hold it down, trying to take care of business.
Keep it up, I'm a nigga.
Other storylines leaned heavily on ethnic or racial stereotypes, Middle Eastern villains during Gulf War storylines, whatever the hell Muhammad Hassan was and why they thought that was a good idea, Japanese or Korean characters exaggerated for laughs, black characters often reduced to over-the-top gimmicks and stereotypes. While WWE has made strides in the modern day towards diversity, Vince McMahon's past choices remain a stain on the company's legacy. Now, maybe the biggest controversy in the history of the McMahon family is what happened in 2022. In 2022, the Wall Street Journal dropped a bombshell. Vince McMahon, the face of WWE, was accused of paying over $12 million in secret hush money to multiple women. These payments were allegedly meant to silence accusations of sexual misconduct spanning decades. WWE's own board launched an internal investigation, and for the first time ever, Vince McMahon stepped down from power. McMahon would eventually return to WWE in early 2023, but it wouldn't last for very long. He forced his way back onto the board with the same intimidation that allegedly had defined his entire career. In January 2024, former WWE employee Janel Grant filed a lawsuit accusing Vince McMahon, WWE, and former talent chief John Laryngitis of sex trafficking, sexual assault, and coercion. Grant said she was hired in 2019 and promised career advancement, but what would follow, as she says, was years of abuse and humiliation. She alleges McMahon used his power to control her employment, demanding sexual acts and even sharing explicit photos with others in the company. Which is where Brock Lesnar's allegations and controversies come into this, as I've dived into in previous videos. Lesnar's role in this involves Vince allegedly setting up a playdate and encounter between Grant and Lesnar. But due to a snowstorm, Grant used this to get out of that meeting with Lesnar. By early 2022, McMahon allegedly forced Grant to sign a $3 million NDA in exchange for her silence. She says she only ever received $1 million of that $3 million, and that McMahon threatened to ruin her reputation if she spoke up. The lawsuit claims even worse, that McMahon trafficked Grant within WWE, including allegedly offering her to other executives as part of corporate deals. One amendment filing names Lesnar as part of this scheme. McMahon denied everything, with his legal team calling the allegations obscene and fabricated. But federal investigators are still watching, court motions are still ongoing, and the evidence is still mounting. McMahon is currently handling a different court case after a car accident a few months back on the day Hulk Hogan died. The Janel Grant lawsuit didn't appear in a vacuum either. It grew from decades of silence, NDAs, and a culture of control that the Wall Street Journal first exposed in 2022. The scandal shattered WWE's corporate facade. It was a reminder that behind the lights, behind the spectacle, behind the WrestleMania, was a man and a system that used power like a weapon. Despite Vince being the most public controversial figure in the family, he isn't the only McMahon to undergo some scrutiny. Linda McMahon, Vince's wife, transitioned from wrestling executive to politics, serving as head of the Small Business Administration under Donald Trump's administration. Her tenure drew criticism for blurred lines between politics and WWE's corporate influence. And even as of today, under Triple H, WWE still flirts with Donald Trump and his administration politically. However, this was just the return of the presidential fitness test, amid rumors of Triple H choosing politics in his own right over leading WWE. During her time at WWE, Linda oversaw many of the company's business practices. Several issues with Linda included the classification of wrestlers as independent contractors rather than employees, which denied many benefits like healthcare, retirement, and union protection. So equally, for as much as Vince didn't want this, it was Linda also making the decision. While Vince was the indicted party in the steroid scandal, Linda, as the CEO at the time, faced scrutiny for what the company knew and did. Linda also has accusations of using company resources in her political campaigns. For example, a 2010 complaint alleges WWE resources were used in Linda's Senate run. Her move into politics raised concerns about the conflicts of interest blending business and public service. One specific controversy was that in 2009, during her appointment to Connecticut's State Board of Education, it emerged that she had misrepresented her educational credentials. She claimed a bachelor's degree in education from East Carolina University, whereas her actual degree was in French. She also oversaw WWE programming during the company's most misogynistic and homophobic times. And her political nomination in 2024 for US Education Secretary reopened scrutiny of her WWE past. But none of Linda's controversies currently involve criminal convictions. These are allegations, conflicts, and reputational issues, which are still relevant in the larger narrative of the McMahon Empire, but not quite what Vince is dealing with. Now, Shane McMahon, Vince's son, the one often seen as the outsider. The flashy on-screen risk taker who would do things you just wouldn't expect him to do. But behind the theatrics lie real-world businesses and legal troubles. Shane has faced lawsuits over failed business ventures like You On Demand. One major issue was that in August 2020, Shane McMahon was named as a defendant in a shareholder lawsuit against the fintech firm Ideanomics, where he served as the vice chairman of the board. The lawsuit accused Shane and others of breaches, unjust enrichment, abuse of control, gross mismanagement of corporate assets, and violations of federal securities law. The lawsuit was filed, but the allegations of wrongdoing are not yet necessarily resolved in court. Finally, Stephanie McMahon, a WWE royalty, the daughter of Vince, the Queendom. And despite being one of the more favorable McMahons in many respects, her story isn't all glitz and glamour either. Stephanie's most notable controversies include an issue around Mike Tyson. In the Mr. McMahon docuseries on Netflix last year, it captured a moment where Stephanie admitted that she didn't know Mike Tyson had prior rape conviction when WWE worked with him in 1998.
Knowing Mike Tyson's baggage during the 90s, was it risky for WWE to so fully invest in him?
And he hadn't been arrested for rape yet, though, when we did that, right? He had?
Yeah, he had.
Everyone questioned her awareness and the believability of that statement. Stephanie was also involved in controversial storylines within WWE. Some were disturbing, albeit I think she is justified in refusing what I'm about to say. There were proposed angles she refused, like one storyline suggested where she be portrayed as pregnant by her father's character. And understandably, she called it completely disgusting because what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Even though scripted, Vince's treatment of his family in storylines raised eyebrows as to who the family really was. In January of 2023, Stephanie resigned from WWE, with reports saying she wanted out after months of high-pressure scrutiny due to her father's drama. She has not faced any criminal charges like the rest of her family, but her corporate role, board-level decisions, and time in charge during her father's scandals create ethical and reputational questions about her. Even the aforementioned Janel Grant lawsuit indirectly touches on Stephanie McMahon. Stephanie was part of senior leadership during the period of hush money settlements. Her decisions or inaction contributed to WWE's culture of secrecy. Stephanie's controversies are subtle, not criminal, but significant in the wider scale of things. Her reputation is inseparable from WWE's corporate and family drama. As of today, WWE stands taller than ever, merged with UFC under TKO, streaming worldwide and more profitable than ever before. Under Nick Khan and Triple H, the company has its own run of controversies nowadays that I'm sure I'll discuss in the future, from the over-increased exposure of advertisements to their relationship with Saudi Arabia and more. Yet the shadow of Vince McMahon still lingers. Many of you will say he's a genius, the man who revolutionized sports entertainment, to which I will absolutely say, without Vince McMahon, this doesn't get to where it has and where it was, and that much I can submit. But understandably to many others, he's the villain behind many decades of scandal, exploitation, and abuse. Weird perverted storylines mixed in with his bad booking and an evil tyrant who went senile. The McMahon family's story is one of wrestling's greatest contradictions. A dynasty that gave millions of fans joy and caused countless damage behind the curtain. The same company where somehow after all this alleged and proven crime, will still have some fans praising Vince as a god and wanting him back in the company, while others will wish death upon the evil he is, hoping he will never return. There are probably even more controversies that will come out about this family or that I could dive into in the future, but maybe that's the ultimate legacy for the McMahon family, winning at any cost, even if that cost is everything.